Hello, beautiful people. It's Lulu. Welcome to the Lulu Essey podcast. This is where you get to do life on your terms, where we build mental fitness and we discover how to build self-love and self-worth from the inside out. These conversations are unedited and always from the heart. If this is your first time listening, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And if you've been on this journey with me for a while, thank you for continuing to show up. I'm still traveling, so my background is still different for those of you watching. Today is part 2 of a 3-part series where I'm sharing my personal experience with IV ketamine treatment for bipolar disorder. If you haven't listened to part 1, I'd encourage you to go back to last week's episode, where I shared the full backstory of my 30-year journey with bipolar and how I got to the point of exploring this treatment. This episode also stands on its own, so stay with me. And before I go any further, I want to reiterate something I said last week because it matters. It really matters. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. And I'm not recommending this treatment to anyone. What I am is someone who has lived with severe bipolar for 30 years. And I want to share honestly and without any filters or sensationalism what this particular treatment has been like for me. If anything I share calls to you, please talk to your psychiatrist, your doctor, your treatment team. This is my story. It's not medical advice, and I'm sharing it to shed light on the options available and how there is never a one-size-fits-all approach and how we can actively participate in our own treatment with our care team. Last week, I told you about the road that led me here. Today, I want to tell you about what happened when I walked through the treatment door. I was not scared, not one tiny bit. Honestly, there wasn't an apprehensive cell in my body. And I think that's important to say because when I read other people's accounts of ketamine treatment, fear, skepticism, or just a general, I'm not too sure about this, but I'll give it a try, was often a part of their story. Fear of the unknown, fear of losing control, fear of what might come up. And I completely get that, but it was not my experience. By the time I walked into my first appointment, I had been researching this for many months. It was actually almost 2 years. Not because I thought I'd need it at the time, but out of genuine interest. I looked at it clinically, I'd read personal accounts, I'd educated myself on how it actually works in the brain. And a lot of the deeper science stuff felt way too sciencey for me without any clinical training. But I have a solid understanding of what to expect, and that preparation made a huge difference. I was going into this eyes wide open. I was informed and empowered, and I participated in my experience. I was so ready. I was so open, and I so wanted this to work for me and to help me that there was no resistance in me at all. I went all in. I surrendered to it entirely. I felt like I just melted into it. I want to add that there are 3 types of ketamine treatment, and IV or intravenous is one of them. The other forms come in a lozenge-type tablet. It's not really a tablet that you put under your tongue. And the other comes in the form of a nasal spray. And these are not accurate medical terms or descriptions, but I realize I hadn't made that clear last week. And again, not one size fits all, but my size was the IV treatment, the intravenous treatment. So your first session begins with an orientation. You sit with the doctor for about 45 minutes, and they explain exactly what they're going to do, step by step. They weigh you, and the reason they weigh you is that the dosage of ketamine is calibrated specifically according to your body weight. Everything is precise. Everything is intentional. Now, nothing the doctor told me in that orientation was new. I had come across it, all of it, in my research. However, it was so helpful to hear her explain it in a really practical way. And it was still very meaningful because it confirmed that I had prepared myself well. And it reinforced something I want you to hear. You are able to empower yourself in this process. We don't have to walk in not knowing. We can arrive informed, and that is our form of self-advocacy. What also made my preparation important is that by the time I arrived in the treatment room, I was cognitively not in a great place. I was actually in an awful place. My brain was so slow, so foggy. My anxiety about my state was skyrocketing. I was then taken into the treatment room. The room was warm and had soft lighting. There was a beautiful, comfy, reclining chair. And I really appreciated the atmosphere, which had no symbols, no statues. It felt neutral, a space that I could bring myself to. And everything feels intentional. It feels safe. It feels held, like a cozy cocoon. The nurse prepares the infusion, the needle goes in my vein, and before it starts running, I choose an aromatherapy scent and a piece of music from a very specially curated playlist. I was then given a blackout eye mask and noise-cancelling headphones. And for my first treatment, both the nurse and the doctor stayed with me for the entire duration. The drip itself runs, or IV runs, for about 45 minutes. And all of these details, which are so beautifully intentional, made me feel like this was a powerful intersection of spiritual intention and traditional medicine. My personal interpretation. And having been in various hospitals and institutions decades ago, and then in doctors' offices and outpatient centers following that, this felt so different. And I so appreciate this difference. From the moment you walk into the center, every detail feels considered, respectful. It's like a warm hug. It's deeply mindful. Now, before you even go to a center, you have the option to work with a therapist to integrate what happens during the treatment. In my first session with her, which was before my treatment, she invited me to set an intention for the upcoming treatment. The whole process is referred to as a journey. And I loved this idea, and I spent days before my first infusion refining my intention. I wrote it down and I repeated it several times in the days before. And just before the infusion start, the nurse asks you if you have an intention and if you'd like to share it. I always share my intention because I believe in the power of saying things out loud. I love to give my intention voice. Setting my intention required real focus because there was so much I wanted from this treatment, so much I was carrying. I needed to focus my mind on what I needed most and not just ask for every single thing. Clarity is important to me, and at the same time, it was hard because of my state of mind. My intention always began with the words, please show me how to. That is the root. Please show me how to find relief from my symptoms. Please show me how to release this depressive episode. Those are examples. I wrote it down, I refined it, and I read it out aloud. My intentions also operated on a deeper level, one that I'll share more about next week. But for now, I'll just say that the opportunity to access parts of myself that I haven't been able to reach cognitively was part of what made this treatment feel so significant. And as I mentioned, they call the experience a journey. And I think that word is really important. The doctor told me something before my first session that was really reassuring. She said to me, "Don't have any expectation of what the journey will feel like." She said that regardless of what I do or don't experience during the journey, the medicine will still work. She told me some people just see a single color and some people have a fully immersive experience. And whatever happens for you is exactly what is supposed to happen. This is what she told me. And I can tell you that I have had a fully immersive experience, and I mean all caps. I'm not going to share the specific details of what I saw, because those images and symbols are deeply personal to me, and they wouldn't be particularly helpful to anyone else. And I think it just becomes sensational clickbait. Your journey will be yours, but what I can share is how it felt. I was completely dissociated from my body, but in a way that was so soothingly comfortable and non-threatening. I felt such a deep sense of relaxation. Actually, I got to the point where I wasn't really even aware of my surroundings at all. I was in another state entirely. And the overarching experience, the thing I keep coming back to when I try and articulate what happened, is a profound feeling of oneness and awareness. It was like opening an aperture on a lens. And I know that will either resonate with you or not, but it's my truth. It was a profoundly, deeply beautiful and moving experience. And I was completely and utterly, I just surrendered to what was happening. I gave myself over fully. And I never felt scared, not once, not during any of my following sessions. When the infusion finishes, I slowly start to come round. It's actually very similar to waking up from an anesthetic, which makes perfect sense because ketamine is what is used in anesthesia. And for me, this part was very gentle. It wasn't a jarring transition, just a gradual, peaceful resurfacing. Then the nurse brings you a special herbal tea, and I have time to just sit with myself and gather my thoughts. At first, I feel a little groggy, but that feeling lifts quickly. And when I feel ready, I stand up. And if all is well and I can balance on my feet and feel comfortable, I am what's called medically cleared to leave. But you're also invited to go to a reflection space where you can spend as much time as you want before you go home. My integration therapist had encouraged me to take notes immediately after each session. And it's funny because I had a real sense that physically taking notes would be too hard for me, and it was. So I had organized with the nurse to hand me my phone immediately after, and I recorded a voice note of my experience right there in the chair. I wasn't particularly coherent, but I had something. a record of what I had just been through, captured in real time before the clarity of that moment faded. And I'm so pleased I did that. The initial treatment protocol for the session where I went, the treatment center where I went, is 4 weeks, twice every week for 2 weeks. And so you're having the sessions quite quickly back to back, so the treatment has time to build. Each of my 4 sessions was completely different in terms of the journey itself. I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, there was a natural arc to those sessions. Like the treatment was taking me somewhere, even though I couldn't see the destination while I was in it. After the 4th session, you have a break of about 2 weeks, which is important for full integration. The treatment doesn't end when the IV stops. The integration, the process, the absorbing, and very importantly, the neuroplasticity in your brain continues long after you leave the room. And this is the part I've been waiting to tell you. The day after my first treatment, I started to feel my mood shifting in a meaningful way. It wasn't like somebody waved a magic wand. My mood didn't completely revert overnight. It was incremental. But the pace at which it started to improve was something I have never experienced before. In 30 years of treatment, nothing has ever moved this quickly, this effectively for me. And it's not a clinical explanation of what happened. It's my personal one. My speech returned to normal. And if you've ever been in a deep, depressive episode, you know exactly what I mean by that. The slowness in my body, the lack of coordination, it started to lift. I started to come back to myself. And what was so profound is that I started to feel like I could participate in my own thoughts again, like I could get a handle on them, instead of my thoughts operating on their own, running completely rogue, without me being able to control them. I was back in the room with my thoughts. I was an active participant again, not a passenger being taken for some diabolical ride. And with that came my sense of agency, a sense of hope and possibility that I hadn't felt in such a long time. I started to feel like I could contribute meaningfully to my own recovery again, like I wasn't just waiting for something or someone to help me. I felt like I was part of the solution again. And of course, as the symptoms started to decrease, the anxiety started to ease as well. Anxiety is so often a response to feeling out of control. And I was starting to feel, for the first time in a long time, like I had some of that control back. I started this episode by telling you I wasn't scared, and I want to end by telling you why I think that matters. I wasn't scared because I had done the work. I had researched, I had prepared, I had shown up as an informed, active participant in my own journey. And that is available to all of us in any area of our lives. I know I keep stressing this, but often as people who suffer psychiatrically, it can feel like you have no control. We don't have to hand over our agency to anyone. We are able to educate ourselves, to ask questions, and we can show up fully and participate in our own healing. If you're listening to this, I hope you feel like you understand a little more about what this experience actually involves. And not from a clinical perspective, but from the perspective of a real person sitting with you and sharing what happened. In part 3 next week, I'm going to share what I'm doing with everything this treatment has given me, the daily practices, the deeper work, and what 3+ months of this has taught me about my relationship with my bipolar and with myself. That episode is where I'll bring it all home for us. And if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. The simple act of sharing could be exactly what someone else needs today to feel less alone. And as always, you can watch this episode on my YouTube channel, where you'll also find my bite-sized shorts. What comes from the heart reaches the heart. And today, with deep respect for your courage and your willingness to stay curious and to participate in your healing journey, this comes straight from my heart to yours. I'll see you next week for part 3.